The CFO was already mid-sentence when I walked into the conference room. Something about digital elevation and reorg momentum. Ethan stood next to him, arms crossed, smiling like he'd just solved hunger with a flowchart. I took the only open seat, 2 chairs down, and kept my face still. My name wasn't on the agenda. I wasn't surprised. HR was there too, all cardigan soft and awkward, clutching a folder like it was a Bible. "Before we get started," she said, almost apologetic, "we'd like to welcome Ethan Kellerman. He's coming in from Boston, YALE MBA, brings a fresh lens to legacy challenges." The words hung in the air like old perfume, familiar, cloying, and just passive-aggressive enough to sting. Then she said it. "He'll be leading the system strategy workstream. You'll still be involved, of course, just more in a support capacity. With his background, we think you'll understand." My coffee burned in my throat. Hey, if you've ever been quietly erased like that, with a smile and a compliment about your stability, do me a favor. Hit the like button and make sure you're subscribed. 97% of folks listening don't subscribe, but it helps us keep building stories like this one. Now, back to it. I glanced down as they slid the new org chart across the table. Ethan's box was at the top. Mine, now dotted line, a couple tiers down, but it was the spreadsheet that really iced it. Compensation breakdown, Ethan, $192,000 base. Me, $109,000. Same title, same scope, different chromosomes and Ivy League gloss, apparently. I kept my hands still. I didn't flinch, didn't curse, didn't cry. That's the trick, you know. They expect a scene so they can call you emotional. But I'd spent years in these walls learning that silence was sharper than any tantrum. "I'll draft a transition plan," I said, sliding the paper back to HR, "and a resignation letter." Her mouth opened, closed. "You're not upset?" "Not at all," I said, rising. "Though you may want to reread Clause 14 of the contractor framework before someone pushes new code." I walked out before they could scramble. Down the hallway, past the DevOps pod where my own script still ran silent every 30 seconds, patching around the cracks no one saw. I didn't take the elevator, I took the stairs. You think more clearly when your feet hurt. By the time I hit the sidewalk, legal already had my BCC. Attached, a full asset control map of the live deployment paths, all tied to MLC Systems LLC. Mine. Let the Yale boy figure that out. I don't remember the rest of that meeting. I remember the shape of Ethan's smirk, though, smug and eager, like a kid who'd just been handed keys to a car he didn't know how to drive. I remember how the HR rep tilted her head when she said, "You'll understand," like the words were meant to be comforting instead of dismissive. But I don't remember what came next because my ears were ringing with numbers. 192,109. Same title, nearly double the pay. And they said it like I'd thank them, like I should be honored to support him. Like all my late nights restoring backups from a fried array in Frankfurt. All the weekends spent reconfiguring load balancers when AWS had a regional hiccup. Like all of that just expired. I stood calmly. Years of practice. I once debugged a core routing failure during a power outage in Seoul while running on 3 hours of sleep and a protein bar. Keeping my voice level in a meeting wasn't hard. "I'll draft my transition plan," I said, then let that pause hang in the air just long enough. "And a resignation letter." That made HR blink. "You're not upset?" I smiled. "Not at all." I turned before anyone could ask another thing. But at the door, I gave them one last gift. "You'll want to review Clause 14 in the contractor framework," I said. "It governs code deployment pipelines and proprietary stabilization layers. Enforcement activates at offboarding." They didn't ask what that meant, because they didn't know, because Ethan didn't know, because not one of them had ever bothered to read the licensing terms they signed 5 fiscal years ago when they asked me to legally firewall our core pipelines through my LLC. I walked straight to my desk, didn't say a word. Packed only the things that mattered, my backup drive, a mug with a cracked handle from our first successful North American launch, and the old binder labeled MLC Custody, Active Nodes. I slid it into my bag like it was a library book. Before I left, I BCC'd legal. Time-stamped asset control maps, node lists, a copy of the last executed Clause 14.1 document with my countersignature still fresh. The rest? Automated. The offboarding protocol had been written years ago, the same month they froze our operating budget and told us to get creative. So I did. I got very creative, and they signed off on every line of it. I passed Ethan in the hallway on the way out. He gave me that nod some men give women when they assume they've won something. Like I was just another stepping stone in his curated ascent to middle-tier mediocrity. I didn't nod back. I didn't need to. He was already standing on my foundation, and it was about to vanish. At 3:10 on the dot, I closed my final session. Not with a bang, not with a dramatic keyboard slam, just a controlled logout. No farewell Slack message, no passive-aggressive good luck email, just a quiet click, the kind of silence that has weight to it. At 3:11, the tunnels began to throttle. Not crash, not break. That would have been childish. No, this was elegant. Every pipeline, QA, staging, pre-prod, hotfix, shifted into read-only mode, a gentle lock, the kind you don't notice until you need to do something and can't. At 3:12, a rule I'd written myself fired an automated dispatch to legal, IT security, and the CFO. The subject line said it all. Escrow lock activated, custodial contractor framework, clause 14.1. The system had spoken. I didn't need to. By 3:13, I was halfway to my car when my phone buzzed. CFO. I let it ring twice. Picked up. Hey, what's going on with prod access? His voice had that clipped urgency, like he knew something had gone sideways but wasn't sure which direction yet. I resigned, I said, keeping my tone even. Per contract, my deployment environments revert to read-only until the LLC transitions custodianship. He didn't respond right away. I heard a sharp exhale, the sound of someone trying not to yell in public, then a soft curse. Jesus. I didn't say anything else. The silence on my end was intentional. I wanted him to sit in it, to feel how quickly confidence can curdle when the foundation shifts beneath your feet. I knew what they were seeing now: dashboards grayed out, buttons disabled, edit permissions revoked. And in the bottom right corner of every environment window, a new compliance watermark they'd never seen before, now blinking quietly. Controlled under MLC systems, per escrow protocol A22. Nothing was broken, but nothing could move. They didn't know where the keys were. But I did. I'd always known. Because I built the vault, wrote the locks, and buried the blueprints in plain sight, right there in the contract they signed and forgot. This wasn't revenge. This was structure. Tuesday morning, the finance meeting didn't even make it past introductions. They'd planned to review Q2 burn forecasts and finalize the budget overlays. But when the dashboards loaded, well, they didn't. The fiscal modeling tool hung for 5 minutes before timing out. Someone tried to refresh the Tableau instance, but it spun into oblivion. And the core traffic balancer, which I'd personally rebuilt in 2020 when the East Coast node kept failing, threw a critical error. Ethan stood at the whiteboard, marker in hand, mid-buzzword. We're streamlining ingestion layers to isolate ROI pivots across... His tablet beeped. Red error screen. He blinked at it like it was in Morse code. Then came Slack. Ops. At all Y are all rollback scripts locked. Product. Is Ethan supposed to have admin on pre-prod because nothing's compiling? Ethan typed something furiously, tried to look composed. Probably thought the issue was permissions or caching. Probably hadn't looked in the lower left corner of the deployment dashboard, where a thin blinking banner now read, Environment managed under license, direct changes disabled. I wasn't there. But I didn't need to be. The people in that room were watching the skeleton of my work lock itself shut. Someone from QA opened a legacy patch queue. Instead of tickets, it returned a single message. Pipeline custodial rights suspended, escrow pending. By noon, Ethan had already flagged it to it. Probably an expired certificate, he guessed. It wasn't. It was a keystone withdrawal, the quiet kind. I hadn't just left. I'd retracted authorship, license, custodial control, and continuity. I'd pulled the core thread, gently, and the entire fabric was starting to unravel. Not collapse, not catastrophically, just enough to stall. Enough to remind them that comfort isn't the same as control. By 2 p.m., legal had joined the internal thread, quoting clauses they'd apparently never read before. 1 p.m. joked, "Did she take the engine?" Another replied, "She was the engine." I sat at home, coffee in hand, laptop closed. I didn't need to monitor it. The framework was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Fail safely without its author. Let them search. Let Ethan Google escalation framework ownership transfer. Let the dashboards blink. They had no idea what they didn't know, and now they were finally noticing. Thursday's emergency all-hands wasn't on the calendar. It was a panic-born gathering summoned by the CTO himself. He didn't like meetings. He liked working systems, and those were in short supply that week. They'd looped in every team lead, infra, product, DevOps, and sat them around the long glass table where we used to plan launches. Ethan stood near the screen with a half-finished diagram, trying to map out a patch plan. It looked like someone had spilled spaghetti on a flowchart. He launched into jargon. So, if we reroute the deployment scripts through a new Git wrapper, we might circumvent the legal cut in like a scalpel, not loud, just final. Mr. Harris, the general counsel said, her voice calm but cold, never forfeited intellectual property. Per Clause 14, all proprietary code paths are escrow-controlled and require contractor oversight. The room stilled. 1 p.m. shifted in his seat. The DevOps lead leaned back, lips tight. Someone had just opened the door to a locked vault and realized the combination wasn't theirs. Ethan's mouth opened, then closed. He blinked like a man trying to read a language he didn't know. I assumed ownership was internal, he muttered. A friend of mine in that room texted me under the table. He just keeps saying that, she wrote, like it's a defense. I replied simply, it never was. See, that's what they never understood. They thought because I worked quietly, didn't demand credit, didn't posture, I was disposable. But I was a boundary, a legal one, and they signed that boundary into place. Clause 14 wasn't some boilerplate. It was the spine of every system they relied on. And now it had teeth. Back at my place, I was reviewing the last invoice I sent before walking out. In the bottom corner, below the itemized breakdown of node maintenance and failover tuning, sat a small line in gray ink. Custody suspended, escrow terms active until transition authorized. No one at Delacorp had the authority to flip that switch. They needed me for that, or someone I named, and I wasn't naming anyone. Ethan tried again that afternoon. Another call to legal, another draft of a workaround. But the error logs kept stacking, and the logs were loud. It didn't take shouting. It didn't take sabotage, just structure and silence. Friday morning, I was watering the basil on my windowsill when my phone buzzed. My legal rep forwarded directly from the monitoring alerts. Subject line, escalation triggered, unauthorized access attempt. Timestamped at 7:42 a.m. Origin, Delacorp corporate IP, VPN tunneled through their Chicago node. They'd tried brute force. Someone over there must have thought they were clever. Maybe they figured if they couldn't reverse engineer my logic, they could brute their way through a legacy admin shell. Rookie move. All it did was trigger failsafe protocol C, which automatically replicated the logs and forwarded them to my counsel. 15 minutes later, I got another ping. This time, secondhand, my old colleague forwarded me a Slack screenshot. Legal. Who authorized override attempts on the deployment queue? Then, 3 dots, a pause. Legal again. That action constitutes breach under Custodial IP Clause 14.1. Cease immediately. The next escalation came fast. My lawyer called to confirm I hadn't granted temporary access. I said no. She replied, good. I'll be calling their general counsel next. They're treading into violation territory. An hour later, HR finally reached out, like nothing had happened. Soft language, sugar-glazed phrases. Would you be willing to temporarily reactivate your administrative credentials just for a week, just so Ethan can push a critical update? I didn't bother with small talk. I attached a signed PDF. Escrow custody transfer form. Simple. Direct. 6 pages. The last page included a red box. Requires board-level signature prior to execution. They didn't have that. Never did. The last person with that authority had been the founder, and he retired 3 years ago. Everyone else? They'd promoted themselves into titles, but not into custodial power. Their architecture didn't just need access, it needed trust. Documented, not assumed. And I was the last person they'd entrusted with it. I heard from someone in IT that Ethan looked physically ill when legal explained it to him. Wait, he said. We can't make changes to the core environment without her signature. No, came the answer. And the last recorded one is stamped resigned, custody suspended. On their end, every attempt now pulled up the same banner, unauthorized administrative attempt logged. Referred to custodial agreement A14, it didn't scream, it didn't block the screen. It just sat there, unblinking, like the system itself was watching. By Monday, Ethan was sweating. I wasn't there, of course, but the reports trickled in. He kept calling impromptu meetings, whiteboarded vague solutions with arrows pointing nowhere, tossed around phrases like synergistic integration layer and accelerated systems harmony. Word salad, dressed with fear. Midweek, someone from DevOps asked a basic question about the nightly checksum routine, what timestamp it was pegged to, how the delta validation reconciled across regionals. Ethan blinked, flipped through his notes like the answer might materialize if he just believed hard enough. He mumbled something about scripted continuity. The room went quiet. Then someone from finance, who rarely spoke unless numbers were wrong, leaned back and muttered, "Guess they skipped checksum routines at Yale." By Thursday, Ethan was a ghost. Didn't show up to system stand-up, missed the vendor sync. One of the engineers spotted him in the parking lot, just sitting in his car, engine off, staring at his phone like it might fire him first. By Friday, he was gone. No announcement, just gone. Meanwhile, I got a message through the LLC's contact portal, a formal request from Delacour's board liaison. They wanted to inquire about the possibility of a short-term audit consultancy to restore environment integrity. That's corporate for, please fix the thing we broke. I didn't respond immediately. I thought about it, stared at the blinking cursor in the email window for a full minute, then I replied, "No audits, only transitions with escrow oversight. Not a negotiation, a boundary. I had no interest in being the tour guide through a map they tore up themselves. I would hand them a key on my terms through an authorized process, and they could walk the path I'd already paved. I never stepped foot back in that office, never sat across from HR again, never once entered the building. And yet they couldn't run a single sprint without my access token. Every pipeline stall, every failed rollback, every blank dashboard, traced back to the systems they never understood and the person they assumed would always be there. They didn't replace me. They replaced the assumption of me. And that wasn't enough. It was a quiet Tuesday when my phone lit up with an unknown number from the corporate exchange. I knew who it was before I picked up. Only one person would call from that tier directly. "Hello?" I said, already half smiling. "Hi, this is Daniel, the CEO. No assistant, no preamble, just the voice of a man whose empire had tripped over its own arrogance. He didn't waste time. I want to apologize. We were wrong about everything." A pause. Then, "Ethan's gone." Of course he was. "We need to stabilize," Daniel continued. "We'd like to bring you back in, executive tier, strategic oversight, full autonomy, name your terms." There was no malice in his voice, just fatigue, and panic lightly powdered with humility. I let him finish. Then I said gently, "I appreciate the call, but I won't be returning." Silence. Not anger, just resignation. I could hear him weighing what that meant. How many layers would have to shift now that the easy button had said no? "But," I added, "I'm referring you to a partner firm I trust. They'll operate under my architecture, licensed, under new terms." He thanked me like someone nodding at a locked door. I sent the final document later that afternoon. 5 pages, clear language, ironclad structure, new license terms, quarterly reviews, escrow authorization required for every deployment branch, no exceptions. Any override attempt would trigger the same chain that took them down the first time. They signed it. I know, because this time they read every word. Line by line, legal on the call, counsel whispering definitions into the room. They didn't even flinch at the price, because they understood now what they'd dismissed as just systems work was the foundation under their entire digital operation. And I wasn't their foundation anymore, their retainer to the new firm. Double what they used to pay me for half the access. But now they had structure, not loyalty, not blind assumptions, structure. And they finally knew what that was worth. The dust settled without ceremony. No big relaunch, no corporate newsletter with Ethan's face scrubbed from the staff directory. Just a slow, quiet recalibration. Systems coming back online under new terms, less confident hands trembling at every prompt labeled "Do Not Override." Weeks passed. The dashboards returned, but differently. No more unchecked pushes, no last-minute feature flags without pre-clearance. Everything had a key now. Everything required a signature. And every single footer, across every tool, every environment, every script that ran silently in the background, now bore the same sentence. Stability Framework, licensed to MLC Systems LLC, escrow custody active, internal overrides prohibited. They didn't even try to hide it. No branding change, no cosmetic mask, just acknowledgement, visible, daily, persistent. I saw a clip from an industry roundtable later that month. Daniel, the CEO, sitting stiff in a suit that no longer fit quite right, talking about the importance of governance. He wasn't angry, he was converted. Always read the framework, he said, half to the moderator, half to himself. Don't assume loyalty replaces structure. The panel nodded. Some of them probably didn't get it, but I did. I didn't post about it, didn't gloat, didn't break my silence. There was no need. I just watched from a distance. From the safety of a place where my value wasn't up for negotiation every time someone with a shinier resume walked through the door. Where my name wasn't reduced to a support role under the shadow of some Ivy League parachute. There were no headlines, no puff pieces. Just the quiet fact that every sprint, every build, every deploy now depended on terms I wrote and systems I owned. They could still run their show, but only under my conditions. Because when a company chooses image over function, when they ignore the hands holding the foundation steady, when they chase sparkle instead of substance, ownership waits. And then it locks the gate. It wasn't about salary, it was about authorship.
여기 틈 있지? 여기에 내가 구멍을 뚫어놨어. 이렇게 집어넣으면
잡힐 때까지.
이렇게 빼면은 이렇게. 오케이? 누나 올 때까지.
오라님이 난시됐어. 이제 집에 왔어.
일로 바로 온다며. 어?